So what are your thoughts like these days on the FBI and the CIA and everything?
I wouldn't put the blame on particular organizations. I would say the elites and people who want to make money and people who benefit from people who benefit from the people just listening and buying into everything and going to war. They are the black curse of our country.
Yeah. What's up,
They
guys? Thanks for tuning in. This is part two. The reason why I broke it down into two parts is because when I was exporting the file, it just took a lot of gigs. It was taking forever, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to have another 2 hour podcast. So hopefully, this is more watchable and digestible that way. So this latter half of the podcast talks about some more aspects of the JFK assassination that aren't as well known. So we talk about the autopsy and went wrong with there. We also talk about the Allen Dulles and the CIA rabbit hole. That's super interesting. We also talk about the magic bullet theory and how none of that makes sense. And at the end, me and Shane give some our own commentary and thoughts about the actual conspiracies, if they're legit, if they're not, or maybe they're just misplaced. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.
right, yeah, yeah. He no, his whole when he went over to Russia, his whole thing was like, I'm a communist and I'm a worker. Let me become a citizen. And obviously that didn't work out. I think he was doing stuff under the radar, whether it was backed by the intelligence agency or the U.S. government, or not the U.S. government. He hated the U.S. government. Whether it was backed by some organization, I think he was like either trying to make allies with some of the Soviets,
Yeah.
um, or he was just trying to like destroy the U.S. because that's what it seems like. His
Yeah.
motives, that's the whole thing with this. Like, we'll keep jumping back and forth, but his motives were pretty unclear, which makes it more and more difficult.
Yeah.
But
So
obviously he loved Russia. He loved the society, the communist living. Like, every worker gets their due. Like,
yeah.
he likes that philosophy. So that intrigued him.
Hmm. Yeah. So once again, also with that office with where Bannister was and Lee Harvey Oswald. Uh, so once again, the training the exiles to invade Cuba and Bannister's office was within the logistics network. So it went from New Orleans to Dallas to Miami. So I wanted to backtrack. For anyone that doesn't know, the CIA was running this. I think we already kind of mentioned it a couple times, but it was called Operation Mongoose. So that was the program. Once again, the goal was to destabilize and overthrow the Cuban government, who was led by Castro. And it was the CIA was going to do this not through like their own American citizens, but like Cubans that like came from there.
Cuban
and were going to send
exiles.
them over. So do you want to give any quick like a 2 second history on like Castro?
Yeah. Yeah, so
He was never killed, right?
he's
He
never
just died
killed. He lived to an old age, dude.
That's one thing I never thought about. I'm like, that's why
Yeah.
I don't know anything.
Yeah,
Just
so
who he
so Batista, he was basically like this tyrant, right, of Cuba, but they had good relations with the U.S. while Batista was in power, and Castro rebelled, and he gained the support of most of the Cubans to take over and become their leader, and he installed like a communism, Leninism, society immediately, and was negotiating with Russia and all this stuff, and he basically he took power, he gained the trust of like the general public, and basically all the people who still wanted Batista in power, they jumped over to the U.S. and we like supported them and provided for them at first.
Yeah.
And that led to, like you said, Operation Mongoose, the Bay of Pigs invasion,
Yeah.
where the U.S. was not directly involved. We funded supplies and weapons, and we were going to provide air support for basically all these Cuban exiles to land on the beach.
Yeah.
The reason that this operation didn't work,
Because you need the air support, right?
you need the air support, but you also need locals to join in the fighting.
Yeah.
and to fight against Castro, but the locals were on Castro's side. So the plan was to land on the beach, um, sort of push down into like the main part of Cuba and retake the government, retake the country, and that failed. Kennedy denied them air support at last second because he wanted to. He didn't want to de-escalate anymore, but it's like we are already involved. And actually, 4 American pilots got killed.
Right. Yeah.
During that, but the whole what I'm trying to get to with that, when that failed and Kennedy denied air support and didn't fully back the Cuban exiles, that pissed a lot of them off.
Yes. And so one thing about this book, The Devil's Chessboard, it talks it gives a lot of history about the head of the CIA. One really interesting thing too about the FBI and the CIA is that both of their first directors were heads of the that organization for 50 years at a time. I think Hoover was from like 29 to like 77 he was director. Allen Dulles was like straight 50 years. Allen Dulles was part of the Office of Strategic Services, which was basically before the CIA before the CIA in World War II. He was in Germany like fraternizing with like Nazi informants and whatever and spies, and it was super interesting. Not making the connection that he was like pro Hitler or whatever, but it was so interesting. And I was going to mention this later, but it's great that you brought it up now, man. The rising tension between like Kennedy and the CIA before let me get the timelines straight. So there was like several things which made so Kennedy basically ended up firing Allen. We also got to get, by the way, when Oswald gets killed, we have to come back around to that. So between like a couple of these things you mentioned, like there was the Bay of Pigs, there was the overflow. The overflow. Wow, I might edit that out. That was so bad. There was an overthrow. So the CIA was doing coups in all these other countries, right? In the 50s and 60s. Right. It was in Central America.
Sorry, guys, I forgot to mention the Bay of Pigs invasion was CIA orchestrated.
Yeah. So, and once again, all this stuff is like done behind Kennedy's back, because Kennedy does not want I think if I didn't mention this earlier, he was like, once again, he's talking about secret societies. He's like denuclearizing. He's talking about peace, civil rights. Right. And I was going to show this. We won't show it for the sake of time because we're already an hour in. But the Eisenhower, the president before him, gave the world a speech, like his farewell address is like talking about the military industry and like
the
complex
dangers of it.
Yeah, just think about all these wars that Americans involved in, from eventually Vietnam under Johnson,
Korea,
man, like all these insane things, and like dude, even from like Iraq to Afghanistan, like the U.S. is like always. We're like warmongers, it seems like half the time. John Kennedy was anti-war. He was anti all of these things. Right. And so this guy, the head of the CIA, Allen Dulles, was behind most of this stuff. So once again, I'll briefly go over this. So de Gaulle, he was basically the head of France, and he got like 4 generals in the French military to try and turn on him to orchestrate a coup against him. The French ambassador comes to America and is like, hey, is this true? And then he's asking directly Kennedy this, who Kennedy had like a relationship with this guy beforehand, before he became president. And Kennedy goes, oh, no, I am not aware of this at all. And he says this amazing quote to this guy. He says he fully supports de Gaulle and this UN ambassador, but does not have entire control of his government, and does not control the CIA, and cannot speak for what happens over there. So from de Gaulle, there was also, if people really are interested, like there was a coup that happened where this guy got killed, Patrice Lumumba, who was the first ever democratic leader in the Democratic of Congo. Like there's all this stuff happen, like Operation Northwoods. Do you know what Operation Northwoods is?
No, I don't.
So very quick summation of that. It's a declassified CIA operation, which word for word, Shane says, pretext. This is where I read it off an actual document I found online. A pretext which would provide justification for U.S. military intervention in Cuba. And this is where Dulles and many people brought this to Kennedy, sinking like ideas to get involved in the war, sinking a U.S. ship in the Guantanamo Bay, Cubans attacking Guantanamo sentries, and worst of all, they would fly. Alan Dulles, I just read it in The Devil's Chessboard. He made an idea of they would take an airliner with no people in it, fly it over Cuba, make it crash, and then blame it on Cuba so they could get involved in the war.
Yeah.
So I also looked up this thing too. Have you heard of the Gulf of Tonkin?
Yeah.
That arguably could be a similar
with
thing.
Vietnam, yeah. It was a hoax.
And it's like you start looking at it, and all this stuff, it sounds like, oh, it's all conspiracy theories. Like, I think you have to look at it from a critical thinking lens.
People had vested interest to get involved with Vietnam, specifically Lyndon B. Johnson. Kennedy was keeping us out of it. At the time when he was assassinated, we only had military advisors in South Vietnam. We did not...
we weren't doing anything,
We weren't officially at war with them.
Thank you for bringing that up, because too, and this thing, have you heard of it? It's NSAM. It's the National Security Action Memorandum.
Yeah.
So that's what basically I think was what you're referencing. That's what put boots on the ground, essentially in Vietnam, so we could go and use combat.
That 1965, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So it's like, you think like,
dude, think about it. War makes money, and the people in power benefit from war. That's a fact today.
Look at Dick Cheney.
Yes, that is still
Halliburton.
relevant today. So
I think this is the main reason, one of the main reasons why JFK was killed. Because I want to pitch you this question, right? So people say like the mob was involved, the CIA was involved, Lyndon B. Johnson, and all the Russia, Israel, and it's like, dude, there's no way all of these groups and these people, you can't have 1,000 people that's like, oh, we're gonna go kill Kennedy, right? It can't be all of them, right?
no, because then someone would talk and people would find out. It had to been like.
So what do you think it is then?
Dude, I don't know for sure. No one does. But I know I can say this with absolute certainty. It is really hard for me to believe that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone with his own motive. That's just it's too easy to just say, "Oh yeah, that's happened," and there was no one else involved. I don't buy it.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing of the Warren Commission. They came out, and so I didn't mention this, Shane. You know who's on the Warren Commission? Alan Dulles.
Yep.
So
the director.
A couple months before, Kennedy eventually is like, enough. So he goes and fires Alan Dulles, which was like behind the scenes, like Dulles was furious, and it's believed that it wasn't just the firing, because Dulles was well aware of this beforehand. That is one of the reasons why it's like we're going to put a hit on Kennedy. And I think I think Alan Dulles orchestrated it, and through Alan Dulles, you got these other guys. You got David Ferry, you got Bannister, all these other people. I don't even know if I'm going to have the time to bring up this guy Loy Factor, who admitted at the end of his life that he was with Harvey Oswald in the book depository on the sixth floor. But so hopefully everyone's sticking with us and whatever. There's a lot of stuff coming.
Should we give them like if you had to say like right now your best sort of educated guess to who was involved? I would say intelligence, CIA. What would you say?
I think I have an idea of like the person who did it, but now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, damn, I'm not going to have time to even get into that part because we still got so much. But I would say I would say through Alan Dulles, Lee Harvey Oswald, Loy Factor, and this guy Malcolm Wallace, who was a hitman for Lyndon B. Johnson.
Okay, so you tie two together. You have the CIA and Lyndon B. Johnson. I do too.
I think the mob hated him, but I don't think
that's the thing. People say the mob. I think the mob is the lowest on my sort of hierarchy of.
Also, I don't know a lot about the mob
of possible suspects, but the mob was interesting because Robert Kennedy's brother, he was definitely going after the mob. You know that, right?
Well, sorry, I'm interrupting you. Go ahead.
And so he definitely, when he was Attorney General, he was going after the mob, sort of to clean up America, and get rid of like the worst things we have. But a lot of, as we know, like even Kennedy's dad was involved in some part
His
with
dad was, I think, was a bootlegger. RFK Jr. denies it, but
okay, but
just for like liquor and
for
stuff.
context, I'm just saying a lot of people could have been involved in the mob back then,
Yeah.
and had vested interests. And I think Robert Kennedy was trying to take that down. And there's multiple examples of like mobsters saying like, "Oh, these Kennedys gotta get what's coming to them."
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like word for word. And what I think the reason I think they wanted to take out Robert Kennedy more than JFK. But if you take out Robert before JFK, JFK is going to come at you with everything possible and figure out who did it. So I think they saw JFK. Like I'm taking the side that like if you want to look into the mob stuff, I would say Robert Kennedy is the threat. JFK is sort of like an obstacle. Get rid of the obstacle to get to the threat.
Well, I wanted to ask you about this. Was there? I heard that there was a narrative. I didn't really look into this. There was a narrative that like JFK got a controversial win over who was it? Nixon.
Nixon.
So apparently in Illinois, like that's where he needed like the swing vote or whatever.
Yeah.
Are you aware of this at all?
Yep.
I don't know if I'm BSing or whatever. So in Illinois, bro, that's where the mob is. So
Yeah.
Sam
Chicago.
Giancana, a couple other crime families. The narrative that I've been hearing from Lou Ferrante and a couple other journalists is that the mob went and said, Kennedy, or the Kennedy's like, hey, I need to get this. I need to make this happen. Kennedy goes to the mob, which like somehow does pull strings in Illinois, gets him elected. Then he gets elected, and then his brother starts going after the mob harder than like, think about the time we talked about how communism was so big. He's going against the RFK Senior is going against the mob harder than he is communists.
Right.
So they're like, the mob is like, hey, what the F? Like
and people left them alone up to that point, basically.
Yeah.
Basically.
So the mob is like, dude, we get you. We get to the presidency, and you turn our backs on us. We're knocking you out. We're taking you out. And so, let's backtrack. Do you want to talk about? Let's now talk about Oswald being in jail and Jack Ruby and
Yeah. So, obviously, okay. So
Oswald gets captured.
Yep. The cops lift him at the movie theater, bring him into custody. He has an appearance, right, and he's walking through the basement of the police headquarters in Dallas, and a known mob ties club owner, right? He owned a club, Jack Ruby. Just approaches him and shoots him in the stomach, and the shot turned out to be lethal. He died, and that by itself is so bizarre. And Jack Ruby, he always claims like he's like, oh, I did it because I
patriotism, right?
Patriotism. I loved Kennedy. I supported him, and this guy Lee Harvey Oswald,
He did not love Kennedy.
took him from us. So that's his reason. I don't buy it. And one thing I did find in my research is like the night before the motorcade route in Dallas, Jack Ruby had dinner with one of the like a high up mobster from Dallas, like the underboss of Dallas. I forget his name, but so basically they had a steak dinner that the night before. So it's like, how do you explain that? And I don't think it's been explained to this point. But what a good way to look
Ralph Paul?
Am I don't know.
Yeah, that's the name.
But yeah, so that even if you take out like the Jack Ruby thing, the Kennedy assassination is crazy. You put in the Jack Ruby thing, it's like, okay, this is the most crazy thing that's happened in America.
Yeah, so who kills the killer, right? Think about that. So now, like you can't ever get to like Lee Harvey. Not that it becomes a dead end, but now everyone's worried about Jack Ruby. So get this, Shane. So as soon as this happens, right, you'll see this in you'll see this in JFK once again, is that Oswald gets called a lawyer, right? This lawyer, Dean Andrews, shows up the next day in Dallas, right? So, so Oswald's lawyer contacted and arrived within a day of the assassination by a guy named Clay Bertrand, which
Right.
later was Clay Shaw. Um, when he was first interviewed by the Warren Commission, he gave conflicting testimonies to, or sorry, he gave conflicting testimonies to the FBI about how tall Oswald was. He was like 5'8" or
He was
5'10".
a small guy, yeah.
Dean Andrews comes in and says that he was 6'2".
Yeah, that's not adding up.
Um, Also, he claimed that he never knew Oswald by being called. He just had this guy, Clay Bertrand, calls me and said, "Would you like to represent Harvey Lee Oswald?" So then he flies down there the next day. There's this really cool like interaction that Dean Andrews and Jim Garrison actually had, because they knew of each other before the shooting. It's just like so interesting. So, in all this, I have a couple more things on Jack Ruby. So not only being also not being just a scummy guy, dude. Like as soon as he killed Oswald, think about this: how the hell did he get in the police station?
With a gun. Well, security was way more lenient back then. So,
Still though,
I mean,
I think he's been also well known that the Dallas Police Department was corrupt. I don't think it was corrupt to that certain degree. That's another thing where I don't really think it's that corrupt enough that it affected the assassination. But absolutely insane, man.
so do you, going further down a rabbit hole, do you believe that Jack Ruby was so involved in something that he knew he had to carry it out, or did someone send Jack Ruby to do it?
I think he knew that he had to carry him out.
Do you think he owed the mob or something like that?
Oh, he had ties to the mob. So
Yeah.
I'll get to this. There's this there are a couple of random testimonies that really put all this stuff together. But there's like a prostitute that mentioned that like Oswald and Jack Ruby had like a gay sexual relationship. they were dude. There's a lot of gay people in this like thing, man. Like Clay Shaw, like well known like homosexual. Oswald, this guy, Ruby. I'm trying to find.
It's a gay conspiracy ring.
It really is, man. It really is. I'm trying to find this frickin' Jack. Where's my Jack Ruby notes? Jack Ruby. Okay, so, interesting thing about. Do you know what Jack Ruby's real name is?
Nope.
His last name is Rubenstein.
He's Jewish.
People are flipping out. They're like, the Jews are involved with JFK's assassination. It's like, oh my gosh, man. Like, sometimes, like, dude, there's no way all these people can be involved or whatever. So, I'm gonna bring this up in a second. So, police reports confirm that as soon as the police toppled Ruby to the floor after shooting Oswald, he cried out, "What am I doing here? What are you jumping me for?" So. You can go and look this up. I found there's actually a popular Rogan clip that you can check out. So a psychiatrist comes in to evaluate Jack Ruby, right? Because as soon as like he's put in jail or whatever, Jack Ruby's like, they're gonna kill me, like all this stuff. Like I'm worried about my own safety and whatever. So a psychiatrist examines him and determines he was in a fugue state with subsequent amnesia. So a fugue state is like you don't like know what's happening, like just once again amnesia and everything. Fugue states were something that was really. I know people are gonna probably already start like tuning off at this point. Fugue states was something that was heavily researched by doctors in MK Ultra. Hang with me. So when imprisoned, this certain doctor, Louis Joylin West, also known as Jolly West, visits him. So this is April 26, 1964. And this is right before he's about to testify to the Warren Commission. I mentioned this earlier. And he starts to, like, over the last couple, ever since, like, he, like, shot, once he visits this guy,
Jolly West, because this is like a couple months after he's been in prison for a little while. Um, Jolly West leaves Oswald, or leaves Ruby, sorry. And after this, like, Jack Ruby goes insane mentally.
Yeah.
Like, insane. He's saying stuff like, he's hiding under the table. He's saying the Jews will be slaughtered. He was, like, seeing visions of his brothers getting castrated and mutilated, and babies boiled alive in the streets. So what does this all sound like to you, Shane? Sounds like a bad acid trip.
You could tie that in.
Just something to think about. Like I said, you listeners, give us your thoughts.
Well, Alan Dulles was completely involved in MK Ultra because he was the director when the CIA was running it, and the effects of it they determined were too detrimental to continue the programming.
So they just stopped, like good people, right?
Yeah. So what you're saying is that Jack was also, I guess, what's the word I'm thinking of? He was someone installed by the CIA to commit an act similar to Oswald, but he went through conditioning so that he would forget everything.
My thing is that once Oswald actually shot Kennedy or whatever, does Oswald know that he's going to be killed?
They probably, I don't know, man, because they probably promised him with immunity of some sort. But that's, like, it's not likely.
Well, what do you think Jack Ruby was thinking? It's like, well, once I kill Oswald, I'm done for.
See, my belief is I think he owed someone, whether it was the CIA or the mob, I think he owed them basically his life. I don't know what would cause that, so I think he had to do it or they would have.
Something interesting, too, Oswald was interrogated for 12 hours without a lawyer present. This is the day before he gets shot by Jack.
Do we have any of that in writing? No.
Well, it was proven. It was proven that this happened. Jim
no,
Pearson
I'm saying,
proved it.
but we don't have the transcripts of
Oh,
the interrogation.
No.
Yeah.
Hell no, we don't. So, all right, Shane. So let's go. Let's move on now to the. Let's go to the magic bullet theory and everything regarding the JFK's autopsy. So, what do you have on that?
Yeah. So JFK's autopsy is very polarizing because he had two autopsies. The first one by the Dallas medical staff, and that one made a couple conclusions that he had multiple he had one wound in the neck and one wound in the head, and the head wound basically exploded his head, like there's no other way to say it.
Yeah.
But in the Dallas autopsy they confirmed there was a large exit wound the back of his head. Or the back of his neck.
Yep.
And if you think about it, with gunshots, entry wounds are
lots. Move that. I think it's blocking me. Thanks.
Sorry. Entry wounds are a lot smaller than exit wounds. So the bullet comes in, and then it leaves, and it makes a much larger hole. And this was it's a rifle, so it's going to make a pretty big dent. So the examiner concludes this and gives like a press conference. Was it a press conference, or he gave some speech to people saying, "We found this." That would signify a shot from the front. And as we know, Lee Harvey Oswald was in the back, up in the 6th floor of the school book depository.
Right.
So immediately, people tell the medical examiner, like, if you ever say something like that again, you're done. You're going to get fired. You're going to lose your medical license, all that. So he takes it out of the report. JFK gets another autopsy, this time in Maryland.
Yep.
And this one is way different. It makes no mention of the exit wound in the back of the neck. It basically shows his messed up head, exploded head.
I might have a thing of that.
And the way they conclude this was like, we were trying to get his breathing path opened.
Continue.
So they said we were trying to get his breathing path opened. So that's why we created the large wound in the back of his neck. That's not related to a gunshot.
Yeah. So this is the.
Oh, graphic content. Is that actually it, or is that like?
That's it.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Look, dude. Look at this. What do you think this is? That's brain.
Oh my goodness. So yeah.
Yeah. Nuts, huh? So another thing too.
So, but the Maryland autopsy becomes the official
Yep.
one.
And it's so interesting because Shane, if I go and shoot you in the head, right, your head's gonna go back like this.
Yeah.
So they said the Warren Commission 3 bullets. That's not what happened. I think at least 4 were shot. So the first one hits the curb and then like it hits ricochets off it, right? The second one hits JFK, which
In the neck.
in the neck.
And then it hits the governor.
Yeah,
It pierces through the governor.
So the governor
And
too
it fractures his wrist.
fractures his wrist. He also has this magic bullet theory is one that where it goes and it goes through JFK, it goes through Connolly, comes back around and exits his thigh or somewhere else. It's a crazy like stupid theory. So and then the last one obviously is where he gets the final shot to the head. So I believe there's at least 4 shots, and I think the one where he gets shot when he gets shot in the throat, is that the first shot you think?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what I thought.
But like you said, there's one that hit the curb or the undercarriage of the
that's
curb.
the first one. I think the first one missed.
It ricocheted and hit a civilian.
James T.
And he went
Or
to the
Tank.
hospital. And they've also reenacted it, and it's like there's no way Lee Harvey Oswald could fire off 4 shots in that amount of time.
No, even marksman could only do because he had an old bolt action rifle.
Yeah, bolt action.
So it was once you shoot, you go, and then you have to pull it back.
And there's bolt action.
So it was once you shoot, you go, and then you have to pull it back.
And there's literally evidence of the curb. You see a indent of the bullet.
Yep.
So like you can't dispel that one. I will add this to sort of throw in the logical piece of while we're going into the conspiracy. Bullets do act strange when they enter, especially when you hit flesh and they hit bone.
Yeah.
And go through all your tissue. So it's not completely out of the norm for bullets to act that way, but it's very unlikely. I just want to throw that out there as sort of like the baseline logic.
Yeah. And once again, you already said this, but the guy that examined him at Parkland is Malcolm Perry. And then I don't know if you knew about this. So later on, he rescinded his statements, obviously, and whatnot. They forced to revoke his license. So after being pronounced dead, Johnson returns to Air Force One, but he refuses to leave without Jackie Kennedy. But she doesn't want to leave her husband's body. So at this time, the Dallas medical examiner, Earl Rose, says because there's no federal jurisdiction, like he must do the autopsy. So Kennedy's aides and the Dallas like officials like almost getting a huge fight over the body. Like it's almost like a physical alteration. But the Dallas people like relent and they give it over to Air Force One. So 2:38 p.m. On November 22nd, Johnson is sworn in.
2:38, and he got assassinated right at noon, right?
12:30.
12:30.
Yeah. So once again, the autopsy that was done at Bethesda, Maryland, that was interesting. It was a naval base. So the doctors that performed the surgery or the autopsy was James Hughes, Thornton Boswell, which were both Navy commanders, and they had a ballistics wound expert. So I just want to show. 3 years later, also, did you hear about the brain of JFK was missing in the National Archives?
Yeah, it was altered with. Yeah.
Why would they mess with the brain? I just don't get it.
Yeah. They
now it's missing. So all the historians today say the autopsy of the missing brain, that is the worst handled part of this entire debacle. So the HSCA, which is that's like the committee for assassinations that like came out in 76 or whatever to like look into the case. So it said the panel that concluded that the autopsy had extensive failings, including failure to take sufficient photographs, failure to determine the exact exit or entry point to the head bullet, not dissecting the back and neck, and further concluded that 2 doctors were not that the two doctors, the Navy guys, were not qualified to have conducted a forensic autopsy. So this guy on this panel, Milton Halpern, said this, Shane. I thought it was super interesting. That having these two guys, Humes and Boswell, do the autopsy was like, quote, like sending a 7-year-old boy who has taken 3 lessons on the violin over to the New York Philharmonic and expecting him to perform a Tchaikovsky symphony.
Are you talking about the Navy guys
Yeah.
in Maryland?
Did you know this too? While this autopsy is happening, dude, there is like 30 people
In the room.
30 people in the room.
Yeah.
Wild.
That's good. That goes back to the whole thing. We'll never know what was tampered with. They could have rearranged things to fit with the story they provided.
You know what's interesting
They
too?
probably did.
Jackie Kennedy, even she was the one who picked Bethesda because like JFK was a Navy guy.
Yeah.
So she picked
They
it.
should be sympathetic towards him and want to get down to what happened. So.
So
Yeah.
mention Governor Connolly's that bullet that they found.
Yeah, so that was the one. It entered Kennedy's back lower neck, came through his throat, and then it went through the seat and hit Governor Connolly. Was it the left wrist? It fractured the left wrist. And didn't they show? They showed what the bullet looked like.
Yeah, it was like intact.
Intact. When a bullet goes through 2 different bodies, including bone, I'm pretty sure it's going to be like pretty disfigured.
Yeah, so in JFK Revisited, the second one, it shows that, oh, well, how did this get there? Oh, it just fell out of the tracheotomy that they did, in Dallas. And I'm just like, was this just coincidence? Like someone just put a bullet on, like, what the is that? I just don't understand.
Well, even the bullets even the shell casings they found in the school book depository, if you see how those are placed, very curious.
Yeah.
Like they're not people done reenactments of like firing the same amount of shots in the same angle. They don't land there. So either the police like picked them up or they planted them there, or there was only 2 there, right? So they put a third one down because they wanted to dispel any other shooter besides Oswald.
Yeah, and it's amazing how it was just so nuts. So, all right, we'll try to. There's a couple other things I wanted to mention. I feel like we should almost do a second podcast and get even more into the weeds because I'm getting to like probably like 60% of my notes. I think maybe I'll even leave the whole Loy factor testimony for another time because there's so much.
Yeah.
So some of these, an interesting thing to know, one of these JFK experts, this guy's recently been in front of is it Congress, I think? No, it's not Congress. Do you know what that committee is that we've been seeing? Like Anna Paulina Luna is leading it. She's the representative from Florida under Trump. Anyways, so this guy, Jefferson Morley, he's also in the JFK Revisited documentary. So he comments on 66%
Oversight and Accountability Committee?
Yeah.
Is it that one?
Yep. So Jefferson Morley comments that 60% of the people in America a week after the events believe that there was more than one shooter. And this was before like the Warren Commission came out. Like a week later, like there was like all these polls like, where were you when JFK got shot and what do you think about it? And 66% of people at that time believe that there was more than one shooter. Now it's like 70 with all the information we have nowadays. It's like 70 to 80% of people that have watched this case believe that there was more than one shooter. And this was not because of the forthcoming narrative, because of the actual circumstances of the crime. Once again, like I feel like, for the sake of time, we're trying to cover as much as we can and at least give a little bit as much information with each like different topic as you can without like rambling on and on. But I think the whole reason why we don't believe this, Shane, is because it's like, look at the facts. Like everyone thinks that like, oh, conspiracy theories immediately are just people that like see a situation and want to put their own opinion and their own thoughts and values about the American government, the CIA, the FBI, in all these cases.
Yeah.
And even like I said, like recently, like 80,000 documents have been released through the latest ones, the latest files, just a couple weeks ago, and it's just it doesn't even feel like there's been a ton of new things that have been released. Yeah, any thoughts on that specifically?
Well, a lot of the stuff from what I know that's been released is like some of it's redacted, some of it doesn't give the full story. Like there's files out there that have been burned or shredded permanently that we'll never see.
Yeah.
So we definitely got more information, but we did not get the full picture. And no one will ever get the full picture in the history of time. Like it's just not going to happen. It's been concealed so well. And it's one of those tragic things. Like you can do as much research as you want, but you're still going to be missing pieces of the puzzle, that's where your efforts and other people's efforts have come in. Just like become aware of the situation.
Yeah, it's because like what are we actually going to be able to do about it? But I think like probably not a lot. But we should be able to. You should know about these things, right?
Right.
And Shane, this is what we mentioned earlier. This is going way back to the motorcade. This was released recently. Secret Service agent pulled off JFK's car.
Classic WHO. Must-watch video. Secret Service agent pulled off.
Here we go. I'll try to.
Everything seemed normal as the president's Secret Service bodyguards kept their ever-watchful eyes on the crowd.
So we see all these people. He's getting in the motorcade. Right here.
4 more times.
There's Jackie.
Seemed normal. That is, up until this instant. What took place is so odd that we're going to examine the scene 4 more times.
He's getting waved off. See how he was on? See the back here? That's where the back of the tailgate.
Oh. Who waved him off?
In charge, Emery Roberts, as he stands in the Secret Service follow-up car and motions with his hand. What he is doing is calling away the president's 2 most important bodyguards, the bodyguards whose job was to protect the president's back.
That guy behind him is waving these guys off 3 times.
This guy is?
No, this guy. So it repeats one more time.
Watch again as he stands and orders the agents running at the rear of the president's car away. Watch the confusion inside the follow-up car that results.
This guy.
Who is that guy?
I'm not exactly sure.
Is he a Secret Service?
Yeah, so someone from up top.
Is he in a car behind them?
Yeah.
Okay.
To one of 2 agents.
So, dude, remember when I was talking about like the tail lights and whatever, like the
Yeah.
agents being on there? So I'll just send this link to you and you can go look at it. There's more stuff on it. But it's like, dude, like he was just a sitting duck. Like, you know, in the Bible where King David like wants to get with Bathsheba, so he takes Uriah, her husband, and puts him in the front lines, and then like pulls everyone back, so he gets directly killed in combat. Back in the Bible, it was a story, but everyone knows David and Bathsheba. That's the girl that like David's like at home while the Israelites are at war. He looks across his kingdom, sees a woman bathing. He's like, "Oh, I want some of that." Finds out who the husband is, kills the husband, and then marries Bathsheba.
So
that thing,
would do.
huh? You said that's something Kennedy would do?
Yeah.
You said something else, didn't you? So, man, we're going to have to do a follow-up to this podcast. That's crazy. I never thought we were going to have to do this. Right now we're at an hour 42. I think we at least try to go 2 hours. Hopefully the storage on my phone is doing all right. So, what are your thoughts on seeing that, man? Isn't that a ridiculously shocking video? What do you think?
It's hard to say, dude, because I'm at a frame of mind where I'm not gonna believe every little detail after the fact is ties into it. Some of it is literally coincidental. That I could see, like, hey, maybe this like looks weird. You guys are just like running behind the motorcade.
Well, it
Like,
gets waved off though.
I know, but it could just be even if the guy was sitting back, Kennedy probably still would have been killed. Even if it, because think about it, it's hard to say, dude. Because I'm at a frame of mind where I'm not gonna believe every little detail after the fact is ties into it. Some of it is literally coincidental. That I could see, like, hey, maybe this like looks weird. You guys are just like running behind the motorcade.
Well, it
Like,
gets waved off though.
I know, but it could just be even if the guy was sitting back, Kennedy probably still would have been killed. Even if it, because think about it.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying it seems like they're guaranteeing that this is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean,
Also, when they're coming down, what is it, Elm Street? Why didn't they shoot him when he was like directly
when
facing
he was
them?
facing them, that's yeah.
Because it's a much harder shot. Because they also had the tree kind of in a way, right? They shot him at 88 yards.
There could have been a lot of things. Like he's gearing up. His rifle wasn't ready. Two people were looking. Because if you think about it, not a lot of people saw Oswald.
Yeah.
In the window, and if they did, the people who did say they saw him, it's very like the claims are kind of inconsistent. So I bet Oswald had to find his time to get the 3 shots off and then duck back really quickly. So
I don't even know if Oswald shot him. I think he
he's
fired.
definitely involved. Definitely.
I think the
involved.
person from the grassy knoll was the one that killed him.
I mean, yeah, maybe.
That's fine. Hey, if we disagree, that makes a better
there were
podcast.
so many people near the grassy knoll, right? So do you think they'd hear the shot and turn around and go,
Hey, I know you've done your research. I think some of the stuff that I've mentioned, once you check out the things, I think you'd be more, I think it'd just be interesting for you to see. So, but it's not. I don't. Anyone that thinks that doesn't mean they're wrong and whatever. It's like you can't be like what are you? There's so many things that are. There's only a couple things that are super concrete with this, you know. So, I just. Yeah, man. There's just so much here. I'm trying to think of what we want to get into at the end, but I guess we'll go to we'll
can wrap it up soon, right?
We'll wrap it up with some of these questions, and then I think so we'll end with some of these questions, and then like we'll come back another time and revisit it. So here are some questions, man. So one interesting thought that I thought just last night. So if anything, like you think about all the like political like violence that we kind of see in America these days, like it seems like at our time we kind of, or America would look a little, or the Trump administration would look at the left, and you know we're right-leaning guys, so we're like, oh, it's the Democrats that are more violent and Antifa and trying to kill Trump and everything. And if you look at all this, man, it's, if anything, dude, it's like a right-wing conspiracy. It's not a left-wing. Like, look at all these people up in government, the CIA. What do you think? Not at all. No. So what I was saying is that recently, let's say we saw a Trump's assassination attempt. That was pretty clear. I believe it was like a left-wing conspiracy about Trump because like they didn't want him to win. Like if he won, he would totally change America. Like I said, this is just conspiracy Ben going on. I'm saying for this one, look at all these people with the military-industrial complex on the right that were so against Kennedy. I just thought it was interesting because it seemed like in this situation, it's people from that side of the aisle.
I don't think the conspiracy was fully political.
You don't think so?
No. I think
the Bay of Pigs.
There's other motives. Like they had an agenda, but you can't just say like it was completely geared by the Republicans. I think that's completely inaccurate. I think both sides.
That's not what I'm completely saying. I think that's a factor, though.
I think people from both sides wanted it for different reasons. I don't think you can say that it happened because the right's agenda was something that would benefit from Kennedy being assassinated. But he was.
But all the
he was a Democrat, but he was like a well-liked Democrat. He wasn't like a.
I totally agree. You don't think the military cabinet was fully on? Yeah. Yeah, I'll think about that. That's
Yeah.
just my personal thoughts on it. Where I feel like a lot of these people up in, like, from McNamara, the defense secretary, to Alan Dulles, like, they were all
Oh yeah,
very
yeah.
right-leaning people.
They could, yeah, they all could have similar philosophies. But it's going back to your main reason, which I still think is the main reason, is Kennedy wouldn't get involved in Vietnam, and I think, like you said, a lot of people in the military cabinet wanted that. And if you want to say that that's like super right leaning for the time, that's pretty accurate. But
I just meant to make this a little sidebar. I'm sorry if I'm making it into the whole thing. It was just I was just thinking that was something that was just on the front of my mind. Like, if it had to be political, like, what side of the aisle would it be?
Oh,
but
yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
But maybe you're right. Maybe that question is not even necessary.
But it's hard to. Back then, the right and the left were way different than they are now. Way different.
Yeah.
Way different.
You know, I'm going to keep it in because Shane just was schooling and educating me. But okay, cool. Well, I think that was a really good. Thanks for adding that. I think that makes me change my mind on that a little bit. So even though Castro was affected by even with Kennedy, like, in the CIA, like, openly trying to go and assassinate Castro, like, even he said, when he heard, like, word for word about Kennedy's death, he said, quote unquote, quote, "This is bad news. Everything now is going to change," end quote.
Yeah. Yeah, because the repercussions of that, he knew them very well. Because that looks bad on his end. People tried to tie Castro into the murder, was bollocks. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but no, he was absolutely right to react that way, because it was a complete shock, not just to Americans, all around the world, right?
Well, apparently Khrushchev was at the funeral.
Was he?
Yeah, and I'm like, how does that work? Because you guys are mortal enemies. But I guess it's the Cold War, so
Cold War, yeah.
he needs to be. I don't know. But
Well,
yeah,
they
he was at
resolved
that.
the Cuban Missile Crisis, but
Jeez.
but yeah, no, it's one of the things in history. I think they realized at the time, like, how long this would go, how long this would be going on, talked about, and obviously, what, 70 years later, we're still talking
Yeah.
about it. So
And we still don't know everything, right? So it's like,
yeah,
come on, man.
No, that's a good point. Castro definitely knew the implications, and Castro, I think he was doing everything he could to stay in power in Cuba.
But it's crazy. Everyone was going after him.
Yeah.
And he never got killed.
Yeah. Yep.
So interesting. So what are your thoughts, like, these days on the FBI and the CIA and everything?
Good question.
I guess that's a whole big rabbit trail.
Yeah.
If you don't want to give your thoughts because you're worried about the CIA listening, then
No,
understand.
I wouldn't see. I wouldn't put the blame on particular organizations. I would say the elites and people who want to make money and people who benefit from the people just listening and buying into everything and going to war. They are the black curse of our country.
Yeah.
They are the people who are pushing their agendas. It's getting down to us as regular civilians, and they're going to do anything they can to increase their wealth, increase their power, regardless of the atrocities that are a direct cause of it, regardless of trying to negotiate with the other side. And that's why we see the left and the right as far apart as ever
Yeah.
right now. So to your point, the CIA and the FBI, they could be the top of that totem pole, but I think in general the corruption and the disgrace just stems from the high up people.
Absolutely. And I think, once again, I would say CIA, even though I didn't like how the FBI obviously handled the the Trump assassination attempt, I was speaking with, as you know, I know someone that is in one of those organizations, and they really gave me a great perspective where they were saying, like, the CIA and the FBI could never have bad days. So something happens, you're like, you need to be, like, even when we
Accountable.
think you need to be accountable, and you do need to be transparent. And Tulsi Gabbard is talking about transparency with all the signal fire group chat link and all this stuff. But I think when you like through this book and looking into the Kennedy assassination, like dude, in the 70s, no, in the 60s and 50s, like the CIA were f***ing brutal and very like. It's just weird, man. Sometimes I wonder, I'm like, what is really the most powerful like state in the world? Like it's not. I don't think it's really the president anymore, because obviously they have a ton of power.
Yeah.
But it's like the people that are high up that can stay there for obviously there's the whole elite, the question mark. But once again, Hoover, Allen Dulles, like being able to
Maintain those positions. And
for president after president.
Yeah.
You know, it's just insane.
and what are they doing to maintain those positions? That's
so. And I think, but
and
also,
what secrets are they keeping?
and
you know?
also though, somebody has to do the dirty work for America. That's just like the way that
Right, but no one wants to get blamed for having to do the dirty work.
But that's where I'm like, the CIA are ruthless, like killed our own people at times, killed presidents.
And that's the difference about the Soviet Union. The KGB would be like, "Oh, we do the dirty work, and we don't give a."
yeah, they're
when
open
people-
about it.
yeah.
Look at Putin. How many
Yeah.
people he's had whacked.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, then we look at the Clintons and all this stuff.
yeah. So that's the difference. And America's like, "Oh, we're not gonna ostracize our citizens by saying that we do stuff against their interests because we think it would better the interests of the country." You know, they're just not going to come out and say that. You know.
Absolutely, man. I think, I hate to say it, man, but like, even like you look at like Pam Bondi, like, who's the new guy, Kash Patel. They like want like reform for the FBI. Kash Patel wanted to release all these files. 9/11, JFK, Epstein hasn't happened yet, you know.
Right.
And I'm not really surprised, because I think once you get in, you're like, oh, I can't just make this happen.
Yeah.
This person that I know was saying like, oh, all this stuff, like sometimes like because of like the whole, it's because of national security. Like we just don't know the behind the scenes, so it's hard to be like we want accountability and we want all this, but I'm like, in a effed up way, like I'm almost glad that the most vile's not the right word, but it's just like the most capable, sleek, clever, cunning organization in the world, arguably the CIA, is on America's side. But it's like what's their leash?
Right, and that's been the questions probably since they became an agency. So, I don't know, man. I'd love to look more into like how their practices have changed over the years, because I feel like nowadays they're a lot more. I want to say they're a lot more accountable, because they're not going to do stuff like MK Ultra, you know. Nowadays, hell no.
Do you think MK Ultra was legit? Like we've never talked about MK Ultra together.
Yeah, they were experimenting on random people with
Prisoners,
LSD and brainwashing tactics, because they wanted to be able to interrogate enemies and get information from them. So it was completely up. But
I'm not bleeping that out, because that's accurate.
And you see, they absolutely did that, and it's a black stain on their agency, and it will be forever. Yeah, I don't know.
Great. All right, guys. Well, if you made it to the end, thanks for tuning in. This is topics like these about geopolitics or whatever. It's something I'm just like kind of really interested in. Shane's obviously really interested in. There's stuff I'm gonna get wrong. There's stuff I'm gonna get right. There's stuff we're not gonna know about. So if anyone else has any thoughts, comments, let me know.
Yep.
And then
Feel free to correct us if we said anything wrong.
Yeah,
I
like
appreciate that.
I like to even get into some other things another time. There, like I said, there's other things where just the kill list of people that died, just aside from this, the rabbit holes of the Rose Cheremy, Jack Ruby's prostitute, who predicted
Yeah,
Kennedy
Ben
was
loves
going to
that
die before. There's Gary Underhill, who was literally in the CIA, who was outspoken.
No, keep going. You're good.
No, Shane derailed me. So, guys, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Yeah, thanks
Peace.
for
Bye.
hanging.